Hello everyone and welcome to our webinar today, where we're going to be looking into the specific requirements for reporting CSRD in the UK. We're just going to wait just for 1 minute before we get started, just to give everyone who's registered a chance to join and get set up before we dive into the important information. So while we wait, it'd be great to hear where everyone's joining from around the UK, or if you're from outside of the UK, please just drop it in the chat. You'll see the chat in the bottom right of your screen. So let us know where you're joining us from, while we just give people a bit of a chance to log in and get started. Got some in London, Silverstone. Any racing fans out there brings to mind? Edinburgh, or someone else in Sweden, Dover, Pakistan, Munich. Oh, we've got a really good spread. Wigan up in the UK, Norwich, Manchester, Moray, Warsaw. Oh, Warsaw. I like, Stuart, the clarification. Warsaw in the Black Country. I like that. I like that. I like the extra clarification at the end of that. Fantastic. Well, we've got a great range of locations, and Mike, you're in Wales as well. Some wonderful places. Getting me very. I'm sitting in a meeting room in Copenhagen at the moment. Fortunately, the weather has just turned, so we've got sun. So hopefully, I'll see a bit of sun at the end of the day. But thank you all for joining. Great to have you all with us. I think that's enough time for most people to log on. So we'll get started now. Just to kick things off, a little bit of housekeeping. We're going to be running for 45 minutes today, so that will include time for a Q&A after the presentations. The webinar is going to be recorded, so don't worry if you don't catch something or you want to share this with some colleagues. We will send this to you over email after the webinar. And the questions, if you look in the bottom right of your screen again, there's a little tab to ask any questions. So please feel free to answer your questions anytime throughout the webinar, and we will do our best to get to as many as we can throughout the session. If there are some that we can't get to today, then we'll do our best to follow up with you afterwards separately as well. So please drop them in there. And then after the webinar, just a quick heads up, we have a survey. It's just 2 or 3 questions at the end of the webinar. When it closes, you'll be taken to that screen. Would really appreciate it if you could take a few seconds just to give us some feedback. We want to make sure that we're giving you as valuable information and insights in these webinars as possible. Okay, on to the agenda for today. We've got a couple of our experts at Normative to take you through all things CSRD in the UK today, but I'll just run you through the agenda quickly and what we're going to cover. We're going to start by giving a background on CSRD in the UK, so looking at CSRD in the context of the wider regulatory landscape, and then looking into a bit of the background, how it came about, what the purpose is, and then importantly, which businesses CSRD applies to in the UK. Then we're going to move on to the more practical side of things. So some of the essentials that you need to know to report. We're going to have an introduction to one of the key elements of CSRD reporting, which is double materiality. And then also break your CSRD journey down step by step so you can see each phase, what you need to do to report effectively. And then following that, we're going to go through a demo on the Normative platform so you can see exactly how you could tackle CSRD reporting with Normative before we open up for the Q&A. So as I said, we've got 2 of our experts lined up to take you through all of that. So first off, say hello to Demetrius. Demetrius is one of our climate strategy advisors here at Normative. So yeah, if you could just give us a few words to explain your role and who you are, Demetrius, that'd be great.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dimitri. I'm based in London. As a climate strategy advisor, I support our customers from the onboarding, the data gathering, and all the way how they utilize those data to report externally, things like CSRD, CR, many acronyms, and of course, from the how can you utilize this to leverage for reduction. So it's quite a lot of things, especially about understanding how can you use data to take action.
Fantastic. Thanks, Dimitri. Great to have you with us as always. And we also have Vijay Quadras, Product Manager at Normative. Hello to you, Vijay. Welcome on board. Can you just give us a few words to introduce yourself to everyone who's joining today?
Thank you, Michael. Hello, everyone. My name is Vijit. I'm in Sweden. And my responsibility is making sure that our CSRD module not just complies, but is also very easy to use. So we've baked a lot of that into the CSRD module that I will be showing to all of you shortly.
Fantastic. Thank you both. Really looking forward to jumping into the presentation. So before we do that, I'm just going to give you a very quick introduction to Normative and who we are for those of you that aren't as familiar with us. So our vision at Normative is to make known and reduce the sustainability impact of all economic activities on the planet. What that vision means in reality is that we spend a lot of time and expertise to deliver really accurate carbon calculations. So the reason for this is that when companies like yourselves can see their emissions in granular detail, you can actually manage those emissions and act on them. You can report on those emissions through compliance regulation like CSRD, which we're going to go through today. And you can implement emissions reductions initiatives and as a result move towards net zero targets. So this is something we're going to be going into a lot more detail about during today's webinar. And before we jump in, I'd love to hear from you all joining today how prepared you are currently feeling for CSRD. Now, if you look in the bottom right of your screen, you'll see a poll tab. If you wouldn't mind clicking in that and then selecting the option which you feel suits you best. So whether you're feeling prepared for CSRD, either select yes, you're feeling ready, somewhat ready, and you need some support in some areas, or no, I need a lot of support. It'd be great to get a feel for where we are before we jump in. And I think somewhat, yes, I'm feeling ready. Probably as expected, a smaller percentage. There's a lot of complexity to do with this regulation that we're going to try and unpick for you today. And yeah, 60% of you feeling that somewhat ready and you need support in other areas where, yeah, 36% no and you need a lot of support. That is completely normal and completely to be expected as we're starting off. This regulation is expanding its scope and reach, and it's the first time a lot of organisations are doing this. So that's what we're here to support you with today. So without further ado, we can kick things off and get into the heart of today's content. And Dimitri, I'll hand over to you to start digging into CSRD in more detail.
Perfect. Thank you, Michael. Now, before we jump into CSRD, I think it's important to understand why they support to the world, to your organization, and also to your customers. Now, in the last 10 years, we have seen an incredible rise in the way we, as individuals, as consumers, think about our own impact on the planet, right? From the recycling habits to plastic we buy to EV vehicles. And of course, on the other side, the government has created new regulation that mean to operate the markets. Requirements are placed upon business to do carbon accounting. In the same way, they also report their financials data. So these pressures from the consumer, the government has created a competitive imperative, right? That transformation for companies to report the sustainability side of the business successfully. Now, as always, and it's always incredibly nice, is we have many acronyms in this page. So let me kind of walk you through it. In the left side, we have different reporting requirements from the UK, which is things like SSCR and ISOs. And on the right-hand side, we see like EU, things like CSRD, EU CBAM, SFTR, just to name a few. Now, for organizations that operate both in the UK and EU legislation, of course, there'll be some overlapping. And of course, CSRD is one of them that might be applicable if certain criteria are met. Now, I assume that for majority of people here in organizations, this comes as no surprise, right? And of course, today we're going to dive into more detail what the CSRD means for you. But before we jump into the details, Let's understand what CSRD is. CSRD stands for Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. It's a European Union directive designed by the European Commission aimed at enhancing sustainability reporting requirements for companies operating in the EU. Now, the directive aims to improve the consistency, comparability, and reliability of corporate sustainability reporting across the EU by providing a standardized framework for reporting of non-financial information, things like environmental, social governance, or, as we all know, as ESG metrics. So they want to bridge the gap between financial and sustainability reporting. Of course, the report is applicable for organizations that have operations in the EU, and depending on set of criteria, the reporting applicability can vary. And of course, that also can have effect on the timeline that you need to report for CSRD as well. But overall, the main objective of the directive is to move EU towards net zero by providing transparency and comparability of sustainability reporting across the Eurozone. Now, this slide is a lot, so let me kind of walk you through it. And I think that's a great example of how CSRD is a quite complex framework. And depending on different criteria, you need to report in different years. Now, we start first with FY 2024. The financial year, UK and non-EU companies that were previously scoped for NFRD fall under the first category. Now, these companies or groups, according to CSRD, are deemed as large. You can see what the large is on the bottom left corner of the slides, and most likely public interest, for example, listed companies, banks, or insurance, and have over 500 employees. If that's you, you need to report FY 2024 reporting period. Then we have FY 2025 for the financial year of 2025 reporting, UK and non-EU companies with securities listed on a regulated market in the EU fall under the second category. Now, these companies or groups are considered large if they exceed at least two of the following criteria: over 50 million in net turnover, 25 million euros in total balance sheet, and on average of 250 employees during the financial year. Again, this is for large organization. And then we go in FY 2026 for the financial year 26 reporting, UK and non-EU SMEs. SMEs is small and medium enterprises. It doesn't exceed at least two of the three following criteria. We have to report in FY 2026, which is 50 million in net turnover, 25 million in total balance sheet, and an average of 250 employees during the financial year. You can also see on the bottom right corner what SMEs are criteria, as I just told you. And finally, we have FY 2028, which for UK and non-EU that do not have securities in the EU regulated market, but have a net turnover of over 150 million euros in European Union, and either have EU branch with EU generated turnover of over 40 million euros, or SME or large undertaking with securities in EU regulated markets. Now, as I said, it's quite a lot of information, but I think one important thing to note here is that normative, while we can offer advice or CSRD based on our knowledge, experience, and available information, you should always ensure alignment on such really important questions that will determine your CSRD journey with your auditors and your legal team. Of course, here today, we want to give you best practices. And of course, please do reach out if you want to have more information. But this is an important thing that you should always align with your auditors for the timelines. And the reason I say that is because there are a lot of important parameters which you need to take consideration on top of this. For example, which country you need to report can play a role to where you need to report by. A great example of that is Sweden. Some of you might have heard this, but if you want to report, if you have to report in Sweden, under the country-specific rules, they have postponed CSRD reporting by 1 year for the first group. So if your organization fulfills the above criteria that I mentioned and needs to report in Sweden, the earliest that you need to report is 2026 for the financial year of 2025, since Sweden has postponed CSRD by 1 year for the first group, rather 24 that we see here in the slides. So all those things, that's why it's important to verify the information with your auditors. Now, if you're not sure about if CSRD is applicable to you, or you're not sure about the timeline, you can utilize normative legislation tracker. And we, of course, we're always happy to discuss this further. I think that some more information is going to happen into the chat. You can just access it there. Thank you very much, Michelle. Now, if I continue, now that we know the timelines, we can go into specific what is reporting for CSRD in the UK. Now, As I said, identify the reporting deadlines based on your size, operations. And next step is to identify what is applicable for your business. And of course, one of the first steps for your CSRD reporting is undertaking your DMA. DMA stands for Double Materiality Assessment, and of course, a comprehensive evaluation model that considers how the environmental and social factors impact your company's operations, financial performance, and strategic decision-making, as well as how the company's activities affect the external environmental and society at large. But let me break that down for you to make it a bit easier. First, for double materiality assessment, we start with the financial materiality. This is something the traditional view, as we want to call it. It's the outside-in or internal materiality assessment. This first stage involves an internal analysis to identify environmental and social risk and opportunities that have direct impact on your company's financial performance and operations. In here, key factors to consider include climate risk and regulations, social responsibility, consumer preferences, governance practices, supply chain disruptions, and other sustainability-related issues. The second stage is the impact materiality, or inside out or external materiality assessment. The second stage involves analyzing how your company's operations impact the external environment and society, including stakeholders, communities, and ecosystem. Now, this assessment helps identify potential external risk and opportunities that can impact your company's long-term sustainability. Some examples of that, of course, are carbon emissions, diversity, waste management, human rights compliance, biodiversity, labor practice, and many more. And finally, on the third stage is combining the findings from the internal and external assessment to develop a holistic materiality matrix that maps out the most pressing environmental, social, and governance issues that are material for your company and stakeholders. As mentioned, the DMA, Double Materiality Assessment, is the foundation for your CSRD report and is essential for compliance and risk management. Now, when you're undertaking this very comprehensive assessment for your business, you'll also be able to identify potential growth opportunities and support long-term business goals and prosperity in addition to that regular compliance. And to be honest with you, this is something we see daily when we support our own clients with the long-term reduction strategies and net zero implementation. So many cross benefits in addition to that regulatory compliance. But I think we talk a lot about the theory, so let's see how we will support your organization to comply with the CSRD reporting and the steps you need to undertake. And normative approach to CSRD, as always, is a multi-layer support. What that means? It means that you can get the hands-on support and expert of our CSRD experts and the product support, where it allows you to streamline the entire process. Now, from our experience, this approach will allow you to first centralize data collection and management, to have that guide implementation in product, and through professional service to also support you in areas we might be certain. And of course, finding transparent calculations and data management to ensure audit trail from source to report. Now, this is how we support you, right? Both product and with expertise, people from my team. And the way the CSRD journey is we divide in 4 phases. And I'll walk you through that, so exactly what that is. In phase 1, we begin by setting the foundation with a kickoff that focuses on understanding first your business, including legal entities, operations, reporting cycles. And this is super important in order to establish a customized and appropriate project plan that meets the needs of your business. So we always want to understand your business and how we can plan around it. Once the plan is in place, the next step is to conduct an executive training on CSRD practices. This allows to ensure that the board, investors, and of course, team members are well equipped to understand and implement sustainability reporting standards effectively. Once that is done, we can move to phase 2. As CSRD experts will assist you in conducting your double materiality assessment, as we described before, outside of the product, and then the results will be integrated into the platform. Based on the CS input, the relevant data points for your company will be logged in the platform. It's important to note that the materiality of information, which involves knowing which data points can be omitted, meaning basically which data are not relevant to be added to your final report and which must be addressed, is part of the platform, is something that Vijay will show us later in the demo. This ensures that thorough assessment of your applicable data points has been carried out, provide you with this added security. Now, for the phase 3, it's all about data management. It is worth highlighting again that Normative follows a hybrid approach to data collection to offer this best support, similar to what we do with carbon accounting. This approach combines our CSRD consultant and expertise with the product to better understand the specific needs of your business. Throughout the data management and collection process, we will assist you with data identification and collection, addressing barriers, and of course, as always, sharing best practices. And finally, phasing 4, we will conduct several checks to ensure that everything is documented and reported accurately, including multiple sessions with you and the entire team for the final review. In the event of non-approval by your auditors, we can, of course, have additional support provided as needed based on the feedback provided to ensure that we're successful. Now, in here, every organization is unique. So when we enter into a partnership with our customers, we always aim to deeply understand first your business, your needs, timelines, and of course, challenges. This is why your CSRD support includes so many layers of support, from your dedicated climate strategy advisor, your CSRD expert, your account manager, sustainability analyst, and the entire product team backing them to assist you at every stage of the process. But I talk about complexity. I talked also about timelines. So let's see how that timeline can look like in practice. Now, CSRD, it is a complex piece of disclosure with multiple phases that require cross-functional collaboration, deep level expertise, and the ability to manage large amount of data. Now, these slides provide an overview example timeline of a CSRD journey, broken down to the 4 phases as described in the previous section. But this is an example. The specific timelines for your organization will, of course, be determined by the complexity of your organization structure, your operations, your DMA assessment, and of course, the resource available. What I always advise my clients is the earlier you start, the better. Normally, a year before your report deadline, as a minimum, it is advised, but there are multiple organizations that have decided to report a year before as preparation for the official deadline, not to set up all those processes. Become familiar. Now, this is the end of my section. My colleague Vijit will now walk us through the product demo and how this journey will look in the Normative platform. But as described, many of those aspects shown are tackled in combination with that CSRD expert to support you. But Vijit, I give it to you.
Thank you, Dimitri. Let me show you how it actually looks like with many of the things that Dimitri already mentioned. So when you land in the Normative platform, this is how your CSRD reporting module looks like. There's a few things to notice here. The first thing is you can create as many CSRD reports as you want. We are not going to limit you in any way. It can be that you're trying to prepare for your 2026 CSRD report in 2025, or you might want to just create a workflow to understand how to do CSRD reporting in 2025. So there's no limitations. You can create as many reports as you want. And let me quickly walk you through how it looks like when creating a report. You, of course, put in a report name. Currently, we support CSRD, and we plan to support many other frameworks, so stay tuned here. You can put in your reporting here, and basically, step by step, we collect all the information about you as an organization to make sure that when you create a CSRD report, all that information is encapsulated to make sure that all the data points that are valid for you are seen. One thing as I would like to mention as a part of creating the report that Dimitri mentioned is your double materiality assessment, or DMA. Once you finish your DMA with our in-house CSRD experts, you can put that as a part of it inside the product here, just to make sure that only the relevant data points and topics are seen. So in this case, I've already created a report, and let me show you how it looks like. So once you've done the entire initial setup, this is how your CSRD report looks like. You have your CSRD framework. We always do it at a corporate carbon footprint level, or your group footprint. We mention the reporting period, and we also automatically fill in some of the data for you based on the data that we already have from what you've uploaded for your carbon reporting. On the ESRS2, regardless of materiality or not, you have to answer this as an organization, so it's always there. And this is where the double materiality sort of comes to life. We know that based on this materiality for this organization, only E1, E2 is material on the environmental section. The rest of it is not material. So it shows you that it is not material and helps you focus only on what is material to you. And the same applies to social and governance. We only show you the information that is material to you that you have to answer. And when it doesn't, we just very clearly indicate that it, is not material to you, and therefore you don't have to answer it. Now, in case this materiality changes for whatever reason, you can always go back into the reporting settings. You have a bunch of information here that you've previously filled out to make sure that the CSRD report is accurate. But you can go into the sections here and then, depending on what has changed, click the topics that have changed and then save them. Because of the lack of time that we have for this specific demo, I will not click anything new. But something that I'd like to highlight here is the CSRD reporting is, you have so many stakeholders involved and so much of reporting to do with getting information from the right places that we built all of this with usability in mind. So the access group specifically is catering to giving access to the people or groups of people that you think should have access and can contribute to the CSRD report, and limit access depending on who you want to see versus who you want to edit. So you can add business stakeholders or remove business stakeholders right here. Let's get into one example because of time constraint. Climate change is something that we think is applicable to most of our current customers and also most of the organizations today. So this is one example. At a very high level, I can quickly show you that here we cover all the individual sections within a CSRD. So you can see all of it when you want to have a quick glance. Let's say that you've updated something. So here you can mention that in case you'd like to type in a response here, you can type in a dummy response, and then you can get a very clear answer when this section was last updated. A few things to note here. One thing is, depending on if you want references back to the original CSRD document, we give you the application requirements in the paragraph. But also there's another thing where you see consistently there's these questions are required. So CSRD has 3 types of general questions. One is questions that are required, one is questions that are voluntary, and one is questions that are phased in. So required questions are something that you have to answer. Voluntary questions are something that you can skip. And phased in questions, depending on phased in by 1 year, 3 years, or many years, you can actually skip answering that until the next year or 3 years from now. Let me get into where normative really gives its specialty, which is automatically filling in the data. The first thing is energy mix. So when you upload all your carbon data, we make sure that we split the energy, like your total energy by your own operations, your fossil, nuclear, to make sure that the energy splits are very clear and as per CSRD's requirements. So once this information is here, you don't actually have to fill in anything more. All you have to do is approve. And I'll show you how approve works like. So this information was last updated 1 hour ago, and it is split by exactly how CSRD requires it. So what you can do is just go through all of this information and then click on approve. And this step then is done, and it gives you an update here that this approval process was then last updated just a minute ago. Something that I mentioned briefly is on how some questions are required and some questions you can skip. So in the case where something is skipped, you have to, by CSRD standards, actually very clearly mention why it has been skipped or why something is non-material to you. This is called materiality of information. And this really helps also with the audit processes. So when your auditor comes in and asks you why something has been skipped, you can clearly mention here and also give you a timestamp. So let's say in this case, this specific question in E17 is not relevant to me, and then I can mark this as non-material. So the moment I mark this as non-material, it gives me a little dialog box to tell me why. So here, let's say that I filled in, auditor said so. And once this is done, this is a good enough reason. It gives you 2 things. First thing is this was last updated by me. So when the auditor comes in here, they can actually go back to the person who's updated this and also look at this non-material, the reason why this is non-material. And I think this is a really important aspect for CSRD, especially because when you're going through the process of answering close to 1,200 questions, it becomes really hard to understand and also audit this with the auditor. Once this entire report is compiled and collected on the normative platform, you get a complete export of the raw data with the relevant XBRL tags. So this raw data with the relevant XBRL tag is really useful when you're compiling your final CSRD report. In any case, when you have any questions, be it in ESRS2 or on any specific disclosure where you don't know the answer, for example, our in-house experts are always here to guide you and make sure that you have the most relevant information and give you guidance on what information is actually useful to you. So in case you need a comprehensive demo of our platform and product, please book in a demo with us and we can understand your business needs and get into the detail. That's it from my side. Back to you, Michael.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Vijay and Dimitri. A lot that we've covered there in a short amount of time. But I think that's a great overview on where we are, what phases of the journey you need to complete to get to from start to finish and reporting effectively, but then also how we can actually do that in normative. So thank you both very much for taking us through that. We've now got some time for Q&A. So I know a few of you already posted some questions in there. Please go ahead and post some more. And as I say, we will get to as many as we can before the end of our session today. But first one, I think I'll come to you, Dimitri, on this one. Question from Ian coming in around, can you clarify what is meant by securities listed on an EU market?
Yeah, 100%. It means that companies whose stocks, bonds, or other transferable securities are traded on EU stock exchange, then you might be subject to CSRD reporting. There are, as always with CSRD, there are some exceptions, but as the rule, this is what it means.
Perfect. Thank you, Dimitri. Ian, please, if you need any further clarification, please drop in the chat, but thank you for that, Dimitri. Vijay, next up, we've got some that will apply to you. First coming through, let me just pull them up for you here. How does the platform decide which ESRS topics are material? And that comes from Lauren.
That's a really good question. So something that Dimitri mentioned as a part of the DMA is you go through the double materiality assessment process to understand which of the ESRS topics are material to you. So this information is then plugged into the platform, and then that decides what topics are material to you, done in collaboration with the CSRD expertise that we have, and only those topics are then seen to you as I showed as in the demo.
Wonderful, thank you. And we have a follow-up question. This coming from Mark. Is all the information entered into the normative platform XBRL tagged?
Yes, the short answer is yes. So we'll give the relevant XBRL tags in the raw format in case you want to use it for compiling your final report. But yes, it comes with all the XBRL tags.
Perfect. We'll move back to you, Dimitris, to share the questions around. And thank you all for sending in your questions. There's lots coming through, which is great to see. One for you, Dimitri, is around what the ideal timeline is for when a customer starts their carbon journey versus their CSRD journey.
Yeah. It's a hard question, right? Because what I always say, the earlier you start, the better. As I said, we have a lot of organizations, because of the complexity of CSRD, and of course also the repercussions of CSRD from the other side, that they might want to do a year before to report voluntarily to test their processes and go through the process, right? Compared to having to do like last minute. What I would say is the earlier is always the better. And of course, what is always better for our side, we can always start with your carbon journey, right? It involves gathering a lot of valuable data, such as best information for calculating your scope 3 emission against spend. We always use it as an estimation. And of course, we can always transition to activity data, supply specific data, PCFs, lots of more acronyms. I saw one of the questions we had there was about acronyms. There are many here. And of course, once we have all that data, this can also help us identify key suppliers and resources that your company is dependent on, which can provide critical insights when we are undertaking your double materiality assessment. So if you start with your carbon journey, to summarize this, we could take those data into your double materiality assessment and give us more objectives and quantifiable metrics that can understand like how we take action. So the short answer is the earlier the better. You can start with carbon journey, and then of course you can do later also your CSRD. Through all of this, you get a lot of also benefits. There's not just regulatory, as we discussed, right? It can be operational efficiency and other quantifiable metrics.
Fantastic. Thank you, Dimitri. Back over to you, Vijit, this one. We've got a question from Jacob coming in. Is the DMA process built into the platform or is it delivered separately?
So currently this is delivered separately as a part of our CSRD in-house offering. So this is packaged with your CSRD module when you buy the CSRD services from Normative. But right now it is done outside of the platform, and you, with the results of the platform, the results of the DMA process are then input into the platform just to make sure that all the relevant topics are seen.
Perfect. Thank you. You know this product inside out, Vijit. So Vijit is the right man for these questions. More coming in. You were just going through. Thank you all for sending so many in. I'll come to you next, Dimitri. And we have a question. My company is required to report in 2025 on FY24 activity. What are your top tips for completing the process as quickly as possible?
I think I would just repeat a little bit myself what I said before, right? Is start as soon as possible, right? We discussed at the beginning about you can set up a project plan. As soon as you start, the easier you are for your organization. I think that will allow you to establish definite deadlines, clear goals, each phase of the process, who is for your organization, which is all before, right? That you can access groups. The platform that allows you to democratize the action taken across your organization. Because as we know, both for carbon accounting to achieve net zero, but also for really complex disclosures like CSRD, you need the whole organization support. You cannot be done by one person. So that clear project plan is essential. And of course, from that, you can utilize, once you have that, and you have a democratization of data, gathering tools that fits the needs and maturity of your organization. We can start setting processes. In many cases, we see is a lot of organizations might not track the data we need currently, to report that, right? So the earlier you start setting those processes, it's a lot easier. So yeah, overall, clear goal, project plan, define stakeholders, and based on that, create the proper processes to support them.
Fantastic. And I think that was great walking through that phase by phase journey that you did in the presentation as well, Dimitri. There's a lot of, good to see that. I think that complexity of the legislation and turn that into practical next steps that people can carry out is really, really critical. So yeah, thank you for that. Next question from Mihir, I'll pose to you, Vijit. Do you produce the CSRD report itself? And is this based on all the data collected based on data inputted by the customer?
That's a really good question, and we've got this from a lot of our current customers too. So what we produce is raw data. We don't give you a finalized CSRD report. And the reasoning behind this is when you want to produce your final CSRD report, you might have your company-specific fonts or branding or logos or typeset that is very specific to every single company. And your marketing teams might have a lot more control over this compared to someone who's a sustainability head. So just to make sure that we actually split between sustainability and how sustainability is displayed by the organization, we give you all the raw information. Now, the second question is, the second part of this question is all the data collected based on the data input by the customer? Yes. So normative automatically calculates E15 and E16 on the environment topic, but the rest of it is something that you as an organization collect data. So basically, this is a large data collection exercise with multiple stakeholders involved, and get it all into one place in a consolidated and formatted in the right way. So we provide this with the relevant XBRL tag, as someone previously asked before, to make sure that these three components, so your raw data with the right formats and the relevant XBRL tag, is something that contributes to a complete CSRD report.
Fantastic. Thank you, Vijay. Hopefully that helped clarify for you, Mihir. Dimitris, I'll hand back over to you now for a couple coming up. And the first is, if I have done a double materiality assessment already, is it compatible with normative?
Yeah, 100%. You can have different providers do your double materiality assessment compared to your reporting. Of course, as long as the materiality is done properly, right, and is complete. As long as you have done that and you know what is material for your own organization, as we showed during the demo, right, you can use the platform to say, okay, disclosure X, Y, and Z is applicable to me, so then we can support you with getting the data gathering, the final review. What we always say, though, all those things should always also be aligned with your auditors, right? That should always be that connection. But we can support both organizations that want to do the entire CSRD process with us, from DMA all the way to the final review, but also organizations that would just want to do after the DMA process, the phase 3 and 4 that we showed, basically.
Perfect. Thank you, Dimitri. And we've got a couple of more minutes left, so we'll try and get to. We've got lots coming in, so we'll get to one or two more, and then, as I said at the front of the call, if we can't get to yours question, we will go through this and endeavour to get back to you after the webinar as well. Dimitri, another one or two for you to build on that. If CSRD is non-applicable at present, this is from Tim, what are the equivalent frameworks, either voluntary or mandatory, that apply to UK firms, either listed or not listed, regardless of EU or international presence? I'm curious on the regulatory, statutory reporting landscape and what other frameworks you're looking at.
Yeah, this is, for me, it's quite hard to advise because of how I would dare to say generic, right? Because I need to know the specific for your organizations to understand what is applicable for you. As we described, and I'm sorry, I'm going to move more acronyms here. There's so many frameworks that might be applicable for you, right? SCCR, ESOS, CBAM. Now we have EU and UK version. So it depends where your business operates. Different things might be applicable to you or might become applicable later down the line. Now, from our side, we support organizations with many different frameworks, depending again on the applicability. And it's something we work with our clients to also understand, okay, where we stand now, what will be applicable in the future to have that risk management understanding as well. What we suggest is, and I think his team asked that question, we have a legislation tracker in the platform to just give you understanding first. You can add your information about your business, where you operate, what type of business you operate, and then they give you an understanding of what that is. Now, if you need further information, once you know what social legislations, please do reach out and we can provide more customized and specific support.
Thanks, Dimitri. We're running out of time, so we'll give one more question just to close off for you, Dimitri, from Mark Scott, and everyone else. We will get back to you separately after this webinar. But the question is, please could you explain all the acronyms for the UK? Quite a few going around. So, are there any important ones you want to cover off, Dimitri?
I think maybe what I will ask, Michelle, is keep on putting different links while we're talking. So rather than me start telling you more things, again, we've shared a lot of information in the last 45 minutes. we have a glossary of all of these into our website, so you can access them there. And I think most likely this might something pop up now in the chat, so you can find more. I just think it's easy. Personally, I'm a visual person more than listening, especially around those things.
Indeed. Perfect. Thank you, Dimitri. And yeah, as you say, lots on our website. I know Michelle has shared a number of links throughout the course of this webinar. There is that glossary. And we also have a handbook called Decoding CSRD in our resources section of the website, where you can get a really in-depth guide to how to tackle CSRD reporting. So thank you all so much for your questions, and the link to that guide has just popped up there in the corner of your screen. Thank you, Michelle. Really fantastic to have such an engaged audience. So thank you for all of your time. We will, as I say, for those questions we haven't got to today, we'll endeavour to get back to you after this webinar. But hopefully that session has left you feeling more at ease with CSRD. We're really looking forward to talking to you more in the coming weeks and offering you support on your journey. So thank you, Dimitri and Vijit, for your expertise, and of course to Michelle, who you haven't seen on screen, but she's doing everything in the background to make sure this happens and you get all the links you need. So thank you as ever, Michelle, and thank you to all of you for joining us today. It's been fantastic, and we're looking forward to supporting you further in future. One last note, if you could stay on for a couple of seconds, this screen when the webinar closes will take you to the survey. So any feedback you have for us will always just help us improve our webinars and make sure they're as relevant as possible for you all. So thank you for your time again, and have a good rest of the week.